Hi everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Spin With Me series. In this video, I will be spinning 2 of these gorgeous braids from Big Little Fiber Co. Both of them are a Rambouillet wool base, and they are in the colorway Satsumaimo Pie from the Pie Day update from Big Little Fiber Co. And I just love these colors so much. I actually almost bought the Satsumaimo Pie yarn last year for Pie Day, but I resisted, and so when it came back this year, but it came back in fiber form as well, I just felt like I could not resist this time. So I got myself 2 braids and really excited about it. I think it looks so pretty. The yarn or the fiber was super bouncy, super light, not compacted at all. And it was really great to work with. You can just see it here now, like how airy and squishy it looks, and the colors are just so pretty. I love them so much. So right now I'm just showing you just unbraiding the braid of fiber and getting it ready to spin. So there's just that braid of fiber unbraided. And now what I always do, I would say, is to just lay out the fiber in this zigzag kind of format. And it's mostly for me just to see if there's any kind of color pattern happening or what that looks like, because that would help me make a decision on how I want to spin, whether I want to do a chain ply maybe for just like keeping the colors all kind of in place, or to do a fractal spin so that I would have a lot of barber pulling. And yeah, it just really depends on how the fiber looks. And so here you can see the 2 braids next to each other, and I couldn't really see a straightforward color placement or distinction of like color blocks of like it's tan, then purple, then dark purple, and then tan, dark purple, or something like that. So I decided I'm just going to, for now, I'm still thinking at this point probably what kind of spin I want to do, but probably not a fractal. But I'm looking at the width of the fiber right now, and I'm like, that's too wide for me to spin with just straight out of the fiber. And so I am splitting it in half right now. And there's kind of sometimes like natural splitting points. You can kind of see, because the fibers are all kind of laid out like that you can kind of find just, I always just eyeball what half looks like, and then I just start splitting the fiber, and it's really easy to do. And you can see I'm rolling it into a ball right now, and that's usually what I do when I start splitting my fiber, but in this case I unrolled it because I am actually going to split it again in half, and so I will have 4 strands per braid of yarn. So I'm just splitting this one in half right now. I actually find this pretty fun to do. You don't have to be too careful with splitting it in half, because it will just kind of follow the natural, whatever point you picked. Like all the fibers are kind of in a straight line, and so it's really easy to just like pull it apart. So now you'll see with one of those halves, I'm trying to find the halfway point for this one and splitting that in half as well. And because I feel pretty confident that this will be what I spin from now, I am rolling each of those halves into a ball. I've found for me that my preferred way of splitting fiber and spinning from is to split each fiber into 4 sections lengthwise like this, and so I have just like really long sections of fiber to spin from, and that they're not too wide, and so it makes drafting pretty easy. And so now I'm just speeding up the video because I think now you see what I'm doing. And so yeah, just splitting up the remaining. And so I would have 4 balls per braid of fiber. I will have 8 total. And as you'll maybe be able to tell once I start rolling up this second fiber braid into the little balls, the right side or the left side, the one that's already into balls right now, the colors look a little bit lighter than the right side is going to be. And so you'll kind of see that soon once I start rolling those up and placing them down. Yeah, there you can see that the right side just looks a little bit darker, in my opinion. And so that does play into what I'm going to decide to do for the order of my spinning. And so what I decided to do is, because I have 4 balls for each braid, which kind of look, one's left side looks lighter and the right side looks darker, I'm going to alternate between light and dark. Although you'll see here, right here, I make a mistake and I grab 2 of the light ones next to each other. That was not what I intended to do. I wanted to alternate, and I only noticed it now as I'm rewatching the video footage. So yeah, I guess that plan didn't quite work out, but oh well, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that, because I would probably spin up 2 skeins, I would want the colors to look even all throughout, and so I thought alternating would be great. And I believe at this point I decided I'm going to do a chain ply, and so when you do a chain ply, you kind of keep the color order of how you spin it. And yeah, I just wanted it to look even overall. I didn't want one skein to look light and the second to look dark. I just thought alternating would keep them looking similar. So a little fail on my part because I did that wrong, but I had good intentions with alternating. So now I am starting to spin, and you can see here I do have like that loop on my yarn that's like already attached to my wheel or my bobbin, and I just kind of thread my fiber through that, and now I'm starting to spin. This is the fun part for me. At this point, I didn't really have like a end goal weight of yarn that I wanted. I just knew that since I was doing a chain ply, it would end up being like a 3-ply feel of yarn. So if I wanted maybe a fingering weight 3-ply or chain ply, I would have to spin my singles a little thinner. But I didn't know at this point what project I was going to use the yarn for, and so I just wanted to spin the way that felt nice with the fiber. Sometimes it's easy to spin the fiber really thin, sometimes it's easier to spin it a little thicker, and so I was just kind of spinning to whatever felt good. You can see here that I just have a really small amount of fiber left in whatever ball of fiber I was using here, and so I'm just kind of getting it reattached to start spinning and finishing it up. I really try my best to use all of the fiber as much as possible. Usually how I spin my singles is with a short forward draw method, and you can kind of see that here. I believe that that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of pinching and then moving my fingers forward to feed onto the bobbin, and I'm doing it in short motions. That is I would say my go-to method for spinning. So I finally got to the end of the first ball, I believe, and so this is me reattaching for the second ball. It's always a bit weird, I think, a little awkward for me to rejoin the fiber, but it's nice that you can always kind of stop like what I did and kind of readjust to make sure the join is smooth. I love seeing how the colors look a little different in the fiber form versus when it is spun up on the bobbin. And it's just so pretty. I love seeing it in this form. For the entire spin for this, for the singles and for the plying, I am using my Schacht Ladybug wheel. I love this wheel so much. I got it last year and it's just so fun to spin on. I also have an e-spinner, which I love as well, but there's something about using my feet and doing that treadling motion that makes me feel just like really involved in the spinning and the entire process, and I just love it so much. And if you're also wondering, I do have my wheel using the smallest whirl, which is kind of what determines how fast your wheel goes with the treadling speed. And so I do have it on like the smallest size whirl, and so it does go the fastest, at least with the whirls that I have. I think the wheel did come with 2 different ones, and each one had 2 different sizes, or I guess you can think of it as speeds maybe. And yeah, in the beginning of my spinning, I tended to underspin my singles, and so it would break pretty often when I when I went to ply. And so I decided to go with the smaller whirl for it to go faster, and so hopefully, that helped with getting my singles to be more spun, not underspun, and I think it worked because I haven't had too much of an issue with breakage because of underspinning with my spins lately. So now I'm just showing you how I take out my bobbin, and this is my first full bobbin. It looks so pretty, all spun up here, and I really like it. And now I am moving on to the second one, and I was able to fit 4 of the balls I have on one bobbin. I probably could have put more, but because I had 8 total, I thought splitting it between 4 and 4 on 2 bobbins, that would be nice and even. So I'm just attaching my second bobbin to my wheel now. Oh, I forgot to mention that I spin my singles Z twist, and so my wheel spins clockwise for the singles, and then I will apply S twist, and that will be counterclockwise for the wheel. I am curious, how many of you, if you spin, do you draft with your right hand or your left hand? I think it seems common or more common for people to draft with their left hand. I don't know how or why I decided to draft with my right hand, because I think when my friend Bridget taught me to spin, she was drafting with her left hand, and when I just went to try it, I just naturally went with my right hand instead. To me, I thought that, or like maybe I thought it felt more natural to draft with my right hand because I am right-handed. But I don't know. Let me know your thoughts if you have any on, drafting with your right hand versus your left hand. So this is now the end of the second bobbin, and I'm just finishing it up here. I'm struggling a bit here, and I usually kind of have a hard time taking the whirl off of my, off of the, what is it called, the thing, and I usually get oil on my hands, and so there's like a black spot, and so I'm just trying not to like touch my yarn with my oily hand now from trying to take off my bobbin. Okay, this is really fun. I don't think in the last video I didn't use any kind of like lazy Kate to hold my bobbins. But this time, because I will be plying straight from the bobbin, I do have this homemade lazy Kate that my boyfriend made me out of chopsticks. I think there's many other ways to make your own homemade one if you don't want to buy one, but my boyfriend thought it would be fun to try and create one for me out of chopsticks. So he just used chopsticks and hot glue to make it into this contraption. And this can hold 2 bobbins at a time, and so that's pretty fun. And it's been really nice. That was version 2.0. The first one kind of fell apart at some point, so that second one is the new and improved, and it's been doing well so far. But yeah, so now I am putting on a new bobbin here, and the Ladybug wheel that I have, it came with 3 bobbins, and I haven't bought any extra bobbins so far. And so this method on how I'm plying and spinning works out really nicely to have 3 bobbins, because I just put my singles on 2 bobbins, and because I am going to chain ply, which means that I am going to ply from 1 strand at a time, I will be able to ply from 1 bobbin that has my singles, get it all onto this 3rd bobbin, and then once that's done, I'll have the bobbin that had my singles on free for my next ply. So you can see here, it's kind of really awkward to start the chain ply. I'm trying to just get, in whatever means necessary, 3 strands next to each other by folding up my 1 strand of yarn and making a loop on one end for me to put my fingers through. You can see there, maybe. Don't worry, I'll have another view of my chain plying so you can actually see what's happening. But for me, the start of the chain ply is always kind of difficult. I have to try and like keep the tension, and then I need to try and spin my wheel, but I don't want it to overply. Overplying with chain ply, at least for me, is really easy to overply, and so I have to be very careful to go a little slower with the chain plying, or maybe learn how to make my hands work faster. But either way, yeah, just like once it stops, like once that momentum stops with the chain plying, it's kind of hard to get it back going up and working. So you'll kind of see me just like kind of struggle here a little bit, and even throughout, once I stop, it's kind of hard to restart, but it's all part of the learning process. And this is also my first chain ply that is going to be like an entire braid's worth, and in this case 2 braids. I've practiced chain plying on smaller quantities of fiber for practice, but yeah, this is my first like big chain ply, so excited and nervous to see how it goes. So the way that I'm holding my yarn here, I kind of have my left hand doing a similar motion to like the drafting, where I'm pinching at the point where it's where the twist is and where it's not twisted, and then just kind of going backwards to let that twist into my yarn. And then my right hand is doing the actual, I guess, like chain plying part of it, where I have my fingers through a loop, and then if you crochet, it's the same motion as crocheting, where when you're doing a chain, you have your loop, and then you just grab your like working yarn, I guess in this case, through the loop, and then you just pull it through. So here is another angle, just the other side, where you can actually see what's happening behind my hands here. Hopefully you can see it a little better. So I have the loop, and then I'm grabbing with my index finger of my right hand like that working yarn that's coming from the bobbin and just pulling it through. It's pretty important to have tension throughout this process so that there are no pigtails that get created while you're making this loop. And as you maybe have guessed or thought about, the point where it joins, there is a little bump in the resulting yarn. So like right here where my fingers are touching the yarn, like wherever that loop is, it does create a bump in the yarn. And so far, while I have knitted with my chain plied yarn, I haven't really noticed it while I'm actually knitting with the yarn. There are some times where I'm like, oh, that's where the bump is, but it's kind of rare and definitely not as often as where those bumps happen. And so I thought that was interesting, but it could potentially bother other people to have that slight bump there. But I try to smooth it out as much as possible during the plying. And for chain plying, I think that this is a preferred method for when you want to have kind of like a self-striping yarn happening, because since you're only pulling from one strand, you won't get too much barber pulling. So if your singles have a really kind of long section of one color, your resulting yarn will also have a longer section of that one color. Hopefully that makes sense, but yeah, kind of the resulting yarn from chain ply has a self-striping yarn if your fiber was multicolored and you spun it in a way where there were big sections of one color at a time. Because I split my fiber into smaller sections, each section of color is going to be a little shorter than if I decided to spin just straight from the braid or only split it into 2 instead of 4. And so it's all kind of things to keep in mind if you have specific goals for the color placement of your resulting yarn. And in this case, I just wanted to have some kind of plan, and just so I could see if what I am thinking that it'll come out as will actually be what it comes out as. Here's a slightly closer look at the chain plying. It really is kind of like really hard to get started, but once you get the motion of it, I think it kind of goes, once you get, into the momentum, it's pretty nice to just kind of continue. I will say, if you have to stop plying in the middle of chain plying, I think it's really hard to get it started again. So yeah, just for me personally, at least, I was like, okay, once I start plying, I really just need to not stop until the entire bobbin's done. Okay, here's an even closer look at the chain plying. So you can see how this method creates a 3-ply from one strand, which is really cool. Again, I find it really easy to overply with this method, and it could just be because I'm not used to it, but if you are trying to chain ply for the first time, I would try and take breaks in between, or at least stop your wheel in between some sections so that you can just check out your yarn and see if you like the resulting ply. Here is the bobbin view of the plying. And I love looking at the bobbin when I'm plying because it's like, that's the finished yarn, that's the end result. And you can see actually like that self-striping look that's happening with the resulting yarn. There's not really too much barber pulling, and there's kind of clear color sections that you can see here. And I love that it looks like a gradient, and it's so pretty. Okay, so now if you didn't notice, I am fast forwarding. Don't worry, I am not plying this fast. Just fast forwarding the video because when it's going really fast, you can see the yarn being packed onto the bobbin, and I think that that's really fun to see. Alright, so now I am done plying all of my yarn. You can see that I was able to get one bobbin per, I guess, bobbin of singles, and I was able to do it all with just 3 bobbins for my wheel, which is super nice. And I'm taking off the second one here, and you can see it's not packed on as nicely as that first one, which I think is kind of funny, but I was just getting lazy with moving where the yarn was kind of going onto the bobbin. So, once it focuses, you can see how that looks. I think chain plying is really fun, but it does create a yarn that maybe is a little less consistent throughout, because when you do like a traditional 3-ply or a 2-ply and you're doing that from 2 different strands at a time, if one was thicker and one was thinner, if you apply them all, together, it would even out throughout the whole bobbin. But if you're only pulling from one strand at a time, if you got like thicker throughout, you would still be kind of like in a thick section of yarn. And if you were thinner during another section of your singles, then your entire part of your final resulting yarn will be thin as well. So yeah, just like those are just like all the things that go into, I mean, again, you don't have to think about, making your yarn even if it doesn't bother you, or if you want kind of a more inconsistent yarn, then, it's just things to think about, I guess, when deciding what you want, especially if you're looking for something specific. But in this case, I really just wanted to see how it went and to see if, with this type of fiber that was dyed in this certain way, if I did a chain ply and I split up the fiber in the sections that I did, like how would it come out? And so for me, it's just really fun to have the fiber do what it does and for the resulting yarn to just be what it wants to be. Sometimes for things like sweater spins, it takes a little more time to think about how I want to do it and hope for something specific. But in some cases, I just try not to have any specific plans for what project I want to knit with, and I just kind of go for it, and maybe, the end result of the yarn will then inspire a project that I would want to knit with. And in some cases, maybe I don't want to knit with the resulting yarn because maybe I just want to display it because I think it's really cute. So it's all, I think, personal preference. So now I am just kind of winding it onto my nitty knotty here. And this part I will fast forward because I think, again, it's also fun to see all of the yarn getting unwound from the bobbin. So now that I have one of them all wound up, I'm just doing that thing where I am cutting it off from my bobbin, and then I'm going to tie the ends to the skein itself so that it won't unravel when I wash it. Oh, and this might also be a good time to talk about yardage. And so I do count my yardage before I wash my yarn using the Niddy Noddy. And so every full round on the Niddy Noddy, like I guess big circle, I count as I am winding it up onto here. And so the first skein, I got 162 rounds, and you just multiply that by 2 because of the height of my Niddy Noddy. If you multiply the number of rounds by 2, you'll get your yardage. And so my first skein, I got 324 yards, and my second skein, I got very close. I don't know how they are so close, but I got 328 yards for my second skein. And so I was just 4 yards difference between my two skeins, which is crazy because I did no weighing of my fiber. And also, even if you weigh your fiber and they're equal, you could spin them in different thicknesses to result in different yardage. And so it is crazy to me. I got really close in yardage between both of my skeins, and that is before wash. After washing, I do lose some yardage a little bit, but I don't think it's been anything too drastic. I mean, maybe it's around like 10 yards that I lose potentially. So, there is that to consider, but I don't like to count my yardage after washing unless I'm winding it up for a project. Here's a close-up look of the resulting yarn. And I think it's just so pretty. I love how the colors came out. And now I put on a reusable zip tie. It is my favorite way to wash and then to hang up my skeins once I am done. So now, this is also my favorite thing about my finished spin, is to use a fun-smelling wool wash to make my hand-spun skeins smell so good, just like when I finish up my knitting projects. And so now I just dunk in both of my skeins here into the water and just let them soak. I use slightly warm water for my hand-spun skeins. You can see all the bubbles from the soaking. So once it soaks for maybe like 15 minutes, although sometimes I leave them in a little long because I forget about them because I'm watching TV or something. I just take them out and I try to get as much water out of them. You'll see I have 2 zip ties on this second one, and that's just to help me remember which one is skein number 1 and skein number 2. And so for number 2, I have 2 zip ties on it. And this is mostly just for yardage tracking. So I know which one, when I'm counting yardage and weight, I just know which one is which. And then just like with my finished knits, I just lie them on a towel, and then I just step on the towel to get more water out of it. And now it is ready to do the snapping thing with the yarn. I don't thwack it on the ground just because, I don't know, I don't want to. I don't want to feel like I'm whacking the yarn. So I just do it this way instead, to try and like even out the yarn and maybe fluff it up a little bit. I'm not totally sure. I don't know how much it impacts the resulting yarn, but I just do it anyway because it is kind of fun. And then once I'm done with that and do it a couple of times, I just hang it up on the towel rod thing I have in my bathroom. I do kind of like look away and make kind of a funny face when I do this because the yarn is still a little wet, and so when you do this, the water does kind of like splash off of the yarn. So I don't want to like open my mouth or have my eyes open when I do that. Yay, so that is my yarn all washed, and you can see it looks a lot straighter now. And hanging it this way, I think the weight of the water, goes down, and so it does help to keep the yarn straight as it's drying. And here it is the next day, all done and dried and skeined up. I think it's so cute. You can see how it could result in some striping. There is some sections of barber poling, but I think that that's just from some of the transitions from the different colors. Very happy with the resulting yarn here, and I hope you enjoyed watching me make this video and this spin. I'm already starting to knit with it for a project, and I can't wait to share that all with you as well in my normal podcast videos, although I'm sure you've seen it at this point already. But yeah, I think it's working out really nicely, and I'm really happy with this spin. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next Spin With Me video. Bye!